Joining us now to analyze this is Era. Yeah, he is a founder, a CEO of Citiliving. Joining me right here in the studio. It's great to have you.
Great to be here. Thank you, Ladi, for having me.
Yeah, so I know we've had that issue for a while now, that bridging that housing gap, and we've seen a market where most of the renters they're basically price takers, at this point, because there's not enough supply. But there's so much demand, for housing, right now. Talk to me about what we're seeing, technology-wise. Is technology able to surmount this huge problem, that we see right now?
Yes, technology can. Yeah, but technology is not going to be a silver bullet.
Right.
But technology can scale. It can catalyze the solution. And every technology is as good as the science backing it up. And that's what we say at Citiliving, And by science, we mean the understanding of the problem. We believe, and thank God that the conversation is going on around housing crisis, because there have been many solutions before now around home ownership. And for us, we believe that the housing crisis is first a rental housing problem before it is a home ownership problem. Not because home ownership is not part of the problem, but because the numbers say up to 80% of Nigerians in urban cities rent apartments. And if you check the solutions out there, from government, from private individuals, they have been tailored around home ownership and then low-cost housing. Nobody is looking at what we call the missing middle, right? Those who want to rent decent apartments, they want seamless transactions, they do not want middlemen, they do not want hidden charges. Not many people are looking at that, and that is why we are looking at it, right? First is to understand the problem, and not to innovate around it, to understand the core problem, and then technology can scale the solution. Again, technology is not a silver bullet, but without technology, you cannot scale the solution.
And we've seen, governments, some state governments, talking about, okay, you know what, especially in Lagos, let's charge monthly rent, or, nothing long-term, like that. You don't need that bulk sum. But there's still that issue of getting the landlords to actually do that.
Yeah.
So what do you think could help, in that situation? Because, definitely it would be nice to see more supply, of housing units. I guess that could be the silver bullet,
yes,
at this point. So how do we get the landlords and the renters to actually, agree to that rule?
First of all, it is a supply problem. And until you solve the supply issue, every other thing will be playing around the edges, right? So, and in a market where there is huge demand, in fact, there was a tweet we have in our office where someone said, the way the crisis is going, and there will be a point, when we get to a point where individuals will get job opportunities in places like Lagos and not be able to take those opportunities because they do not have livable accommodation, right? And we appreciate what the government is doing, and I'm aware that sometime last week or so they inaugurated some apartments as well, right? Those are kind of solutions we must scale. So until we solve the supply issue, we may not be able to do much around monthly payment, rent control, and all that. And let me make this quick point. Perspective will drive outcomes, right? How you see the problem will determine the solution you prefer, right? How you see the problem. So if you see the problem as a pricing-only problem, right? It's a price problem. You want to introduce rent control. If you see it as a pricing problem, you want to introduce fintech solutions, right? But if you see it as an access problem, right? You want to introduce listing platforms, right? So we have seen listing platforms that have done well but have not solved the problem. But if you see it more as a supply problem, right, that whatever we want to do, we need to put more units out there, first of all. Before any conversation can take place, put units out there, right? So until we do that, we may not be solving the real problem. The real problem for us, there are two things. One is the supply, then the management. Because we have seen government and large institutions build units, right? Because of management, they have not been able to do that. And that's why we have applied technology, right? Our platform, if you visit our platform, like we say, we build, we manage, and then renters thrive. Then housing crisis is resolved, right? So once we build, we manage, renters thrive, and when renters thrive, it means that the transaction is seamless. We reduce the number of middlemen and hidden charges, and then the housing crisis will be solved for 80% of urban dwellers.
All right. Another thing, we've seen, some social media influencers, try to compare luxury housing, in Lagos to luxury housing in another, top city in maybe Kenya.
Okay.
And they say the price is cheaper in those sides, and you get real luxury, in those parts. And we've seen the builders talk about, building materials are really expensive at this point. Is technology able to solve that cost, building cost?
Yes. First of all, let me say no two markets are the same, right? And we must appreciate the problem before we prefer a solution. I keep saying that the science must back the technology. We must appreciate and understand the problem. No two markets are the same. And we cannot sit down here and agree that greed is not part of the problem. There is greed, right? But when you have such huge demand and limited supply, government alone cannot, no matter how well-meaning the government have been, right, they will not be able to meet the gap, right? Right? And as long as you have that huge demand, you will have human inefficiencies, right? We call them greed. So what technology will do and what we do at Citiliving is to reduce the number of middlemen. I'll tell you a story. There's a property, we leverage joint venture models, right? So with landowners, we approach them, we say, okay, let us help you build high-end rental properties on your land, and then we give you some units, and then we take it. So landowners partner with us. So there was a property we negotiated, we were interested in. Then we got to negotiations, really. Then one of the, what they call the mandates, demanded for a fee, not the agency fee now, demanded for a fee. He called that the premium, 100 million naira, just for introducing us to start a construction project.
He doesn't own the land?
He doesn't own the land.
Okay.
He introduced that 100 million naira. Of course, we can't afford that. Of course, we couldn't do that. So once you have that kind of figure, and they now have another 10%, what is going to happen? The cost already, before you even lay the first block, before you come to construction costs. So what technology like Citiliving, what we are doing is to cut off those middlemen. We are dealing with landowners directly. We've had a transaction where, when we came to the transaction, the agent was saying that the landowner pulled out from the previous guys we were talking to because he saw the amount they were going to charge for agency fee, right? So what our technology platform is doing is to direct from builder to renter directly. Then, of course, we're not because we want to take realtors and agents out of the market. Realtors,
because I'm saying you're taking food out of somebody's mouth.
No, we're not doing that. We're not doing that. Of course, technology will disrupt it. So, but if they come to our platform, so of course they work within certain guidelines, right? Because of course, for renters to rent, agents will introduce them, but those guidelines will be fixed by the platform, right? That's the Citiliving platform. For those, because it is a market-driven economy, right? So for those who choose to do business with us, we have set certain principles and guidelines and saying that we understand what the problem is, we are leveraging technology, and we are leveraging partnerships to solve this problem. But by dealing directly, right, we will reduce the inadequacies and inefficiencies that middlemen and bottlenecks that we have seen. And
also take food out of some people's mouth. But yeah,
we are not doing that. We are not doing that because if you go to our platform right now, Citiliving will not thrive without realtors, will not thrive without agents, right? So agents are a key part of our ecosystem. They're a key part of those we partner with. We say we thrive with partnership. In fact, I was supposed to attend the Nigerian Institute of Estate Surveyors and Valuers that just ended. And in fact, there is even a FIAPC event that's coming up that we'll also be part of. You understand? So we understand that it is partnership that will drive the solution, not playing around the edges.
And hopefully
so we're not taking food out of agents.
And hopefully those agents that charge 10,000 naira.
But if you're a greedy agent for inspection, but if you're a greedy agent, you do not have a place in the future we are creating.
All right, so what are you saying, going forward, when it comes to, housing in Africa and countries like Nigeria, where we see such, big deficits?
We see different types of solutions. And those solutions will be driven again by the understanding of the problem. If you think it is an affordability problem, you will want to offer financing.
I'm sorry, especially with, we did get the last rate setting meeting. It was a hold, but, private sector is saying the interest rates are still very, very high. In Nigeria, you can't really do business with that and make a profit.
We cannot deny the fact that interest rates can be better. Everybody wants that, right? Again, hopefully we saw the CBN governor talk about it. So there's stability, there's confidence, and that confidence is bringing investments. And once you have those investments, these things begin to stabilize. So we can continue to pray and support that they achieve the goals they've set for themselves. But beyond that, right, people are building. There's capital funding, what we call luxury apartments that are empty. What platform like Citiliving is saying to do, we are trying to do, not even trying, what we are doing is to say, okay, so this capital that you have deployed, right, you can deploy it into what we call a $20 billion rental market, right, that can deliver returns to you today, deliver cash flow, and of course, there's a tangible asset that we appreciate over time. I had a conversation with someone yesterday, and I told her clearly, If you missed New York 50 years ago and you missed Dubai 20 years ago, you shouldn't miss Lagos, right? Nigeria will get better, Nigeria will urbanize, and Lagos will lead that transformation. And with Citiliving, you will be having a tangible asset.
It's so interesting because when you see the prices of properties in Lagos now, properties that used to command maybe 100 million, you're seeing 1 billion now for that kind of property.
It is a supply problem.
Yeah,
it's a supply problem. Once you deal with the supply, face mask. The time people were pricing face masks out of reach, but today if you go on face mask, if you offer them, you understand. So once we deal with the supply, once we deal with the supply, and platforms like Citiliving and other platforms, right? Once we deal with the supply, then we would, management, then of course we'll be solving the problem.
All right, we'll keep tracking progress there. Thank you so much. It was great having you. Ira Yayi is the founder and CEO at Citiliving. Thank you for coming on.
Thank you so much, Ladi.